Also joining us, political consultant Tony Signoli and Tim Vercellotti from the Polling Institute at Western New England University. I want to go back to talking about what Mitt Romney needs to do to succeed in South Carolina. He did have a few foot-and-mouth moments when he, first mentioned that he, liked firing people, and, he had other circumstances like that. I just want to know, the polls started to slip, like we said, before the primary. Was that people reacting to some of these, instances that he said? He also had the $10,000 bet, Is this people reacting to him? Should he be concerned about some of the comments that he makes?
I think part of it is some of the preferences among primary voters are not very strongly held. So there's a lot of fluidity. And in a number of polls, people have been asked, how likely are you to change your mind between now and the primary election day? And large percentages in Iowa, it was 41% before the caucus, said they could change their minds. And so that could explain some of the fluctuations. In terms of Mitt Romney and South Carolina, I think what he needs to do, again, as Paul said, is stay on message. And to the extent that he has to push back on these criticisms of his stewardship at Bain Capital, talk about the success stories from there. If they could get surrogates out there to offer testimony on his behalf as well, I think that'd be very useful. There are opportunities for the candidates to debate in South Carolina, and those debates have actually been fairly important in terms of watching how the candidates react under pressure, and so he has opportunities in that regard as well.
I was kind of surprised by the number of undecided voters that there still were in New Hampshire leading up to that primary. I think I was just reading there's still about between 30 to 40% in South Carolina undecided. Is this because they're not happy with the selection, or they just don't know? I mean, is this standard for a race?
No. I mean, the Republican electorate has very clearly not been happy about this election. You look at how the succession of, from Bachmann to Perry to to Gingrich, and then, Santorum's little boomlet. I mean, the Republicans have wanted somebody else than Mitt. I mean, he did 38% in New Hampshire instead of 32% 4 years ago. I mean, that's a little better. But I think, though, he will coalesce at this point. The Republicans will rally around him in South Carolina and Florida, partly because, as I said, there's nobody else. And the smart thing for him to do, which is what he's doing, is to pivot and set himself up as running against Barack Obama, not running against Rick Perry, Santorum, etc. His problem is, I think, going to be people like Obama personally, but are unhappy with his economic policies or the outcomes of the economy right now. A lot of people are hopeful that Romney will somehow be better and different. I'll withhold my own judgment.
Sure.
But I think they don't like him personally. And he needs to keep the focus on Obama's economics, not on Obama the person, and not on Mitt Romney the person, and not on Mitt Romney's Bain Capital, because that's very problematic in terms of the economic inequality and unemployment.
I think something that Paul said, though, before, and it's really more Paul's territory than mine, I think that what's happening is that in the GOP, you're exactly right. They're not ecstatic. They're not wild about him. He'll get some benefit by osmosis of the Haley Barbers and the Chris Christies and the right folks, probably real people coming out to endorse him at some point. Who are saying he's got the right economic policies. But I think what the GOP is looking for, they're looking for Ronald Reagan, and I see such ties, such parallels for that 1980 race. There is no Reagan in this race yet. Can he step up to fill in that perception? Politics being perception and not reality, or if it is the Romney reality, can he fit that role? Keep hearing that, especially in the southern states and whatnot, and out in the Midwest, which intrigues me. And as Tim said before, you got a couple of states in play right now, in Ohio, where the Democrats are very, very, very worried that if he can find that voice, if he can find that tall seat in the saddle like Reagan, does he become that person? Does perception take over then?
Do you think we're going to see Ron Paul run as an independent? He's been pretty careful to not rule that out.
My gut is to say no, because I think that, as much of a libertarian as he is, and as angry as he is about some issues, it becomes very different when you're running as a libertarian. The money will start to dry up. He'll still get unique dollars over the internet from those folks who like him on specific issues and like libertarianism and all that. But my gut says no. I think he's enough of a player, enough of a party guy still to try to stay within the framework and to try to weigh in and say, as Paul was saying before, he's got all those 30 and under supporters and whatnot. I've got something. I come to the convention with something. Give me something in return. Deal with me in that kind of a way. Let me be some kind of a deal broker here at the convention.
And we were also, I think you were talking about Newt Gingrich, about how, he can make some big money off of even speaking after this, when you go this far. Yeah. Any ideas to whether or not that's playing into Ron Paul's mind? Also, his son Rand in the Senate.
Well,
how does this affect his career?
Right. It may be more an issue for Rand. If he walks out of the Republican Party, runs as a libertarian again, he's done it before, then it may be very embarrassing to his son, who is a Republican senator, member of the Republican caucus.
And I think that, when you look at we're talking about Mitt Romney and why, the numbers might not be there, is the Republicans are looking. I think if you took a piece of every candidate, you'd probably make most of the Republicans happy. The issue is not any one of them. But when you have Newt Gingrich sitting on the couch with Hillary Clinton talking about global warming, that doesn't warm the cockles of a conservative's heart. So you've got to I think it's got to play out, and it will play out. But it's just like I think if you look at 4 years ago, there were reasons with Hillary Clinton and with Barack Obama. Did they come together? Sure they did. But that's that's going to happen. Are the Republicans still looking for Ronald Reagan? Well, the conservative part of them are. But I don't know how much the conservatives are of the Republican Party anymore. I'm a conservative, but if it's Mitt Romney versus Barack Obama, and Tony said you people are talking in South Carolina about their pocketbooks right now. Well, you got a guy who has that economic background, but will Ron Paul go and become a third party? I think he hurts both parties if he goes third party, because that libertarian voice plays well with Democrats as well as it does with. And I think in that sector of 30 and under, that's the video game generation of leave me alone. I want to go in my basement for 30 hours a day, even though there's only 24, and I want to play video games, and then give me my job so I can buy my new game and leave me alone, and that's about it.
Wow.
But I think he would hurt both candidates rather by running as an independent, not just Mitt Romney.
I would like to defend my students for a second. But no, I agree with you. Actually, I would go even further. I think he would mostly take votes from Obama, because he would be taking votes from the people who are not that enthusiastic about the health care law, but angry that we're not out of Afghanistan already, angry about Guantanamo Bay still being open, and wish that the federal government would back off more on immigration and pot.
I know the day after the primary, Wednesday, the president had plans to be in Chicago to raise some campaign funds. What do you think he's thinking right now? I mean, what do you think we're going to see from Obama in the coming months?
Well, they're definitely focusing on Mitt Romney as the nominee. They're sitting back right now because they really don't have to do much. Other Republicans are launching these attacks against Mitt Romney. They're making note of that, and they'll make use of that interrupt strife in the fall. I think you can see some signals from the White House about the preeminent issues that they'll want to focus on in the coming months. Obama has said he can't run away from the economy, period. He's got to talk about it. He's got to talk about the recovery, that it's not what he would like it to be. But they've also moved in an interesting direction in talking about income inequality and the more powerful argument, mobility among economic classes in this country. And this is actually an interesting overlap between the parties. It's beyond inequality, the 1% and the 99%, is this idea that it's becoming harder and harder for people to move up the economic ladder, that mobility is actually less here than it is in a lot of other countries, in Europe, for example, and Canada, for example. A recent study came out speaking to that effect. And Paul Ryan has talked about that from the right as well as candidates from the left. And one of Obama's chief economic advisors this past week, really focused in on that in a speech. And so it's going to be a very clever I'm not sure. I don't know how effective, but very clever approach to the economy and the unrest about the economy. And it really speaks to the heart of the American dream. Can you pull yourself up? Can your children have better lives than you? And this idea that that's becoming harder and harder is something that you may see the White House hammering on in the coming months.
So who do you think